Well, I'm Arthur Gleckler, and I'm here with Bill Hogue, and we're just going to have a little chat. So just as background, Bill was the co-founder of Big Five Software, which did a lot of the TRS-80 games, some of the most famous and most successful games in Van Nuys, California. And late in the history of Big Five's TRS-80 adventures, I came in picture and sent them a disc of Weerd, a game that I had written on my own. And for some odd reason, they decided that they should publish it as their first one, not from their own hands.
Right.
So that was a great milestone for me as a kid.
How old were you?
I was 13 when I started, and probably 14 by the time I sent it to you.
Wow.
But let's see. Bill, like many of us, first used the TRS-80 in high school, junior high school time frame, and then worked in a Radio Shack, right?
In Reseda.
Yes. So many of us just hung out in Radio Shacks, but you had nothing paying to be there.
Yes. And one night I was there, I got called because the alarm had gone off, and I had to go and wait for the alarm company. So I'm sitting there programming on the TRS-80 when the police showed up with their guns on me. And I had to go, I didn't break in here, I'm the programmer. And they just went, as long as you can unlock the door, we're happy. And then they left. So it's like, okay, that was weird.
Wow. Well, having guns drawn on you while you're running with TRS-80, that's a story not many can tell. So let me just list the games that Big Five published: Meteor Mission, Supernova, Galaxy Invasion, Meteor Mission 2, Galaxy Invasion Plus, Cosmic Fighter, Attack Force, Robot Attack, Defense Command, and then on the Atari, Liner 2049.
Liner 2049,
which you're decorating with right now. And then I guess I should say Jeff Conde.
Don't forget Body Bob Strikes Back. That was
Body Bob Strikes Back
on the Atari too.
Okay.
That's the last game.
Okay. Sorry. And Jeff Conde started Big Five with
you.
Yeah. Good. And I'm just giving a little bit of history before we start the more. And then you worked at Technicolor for many years?
Yes. If you went to a movie theater in the 90s and the 2000s, you were watching something that was printed on micro.
A 2-story high machine.
We had 3 floors of our building, and there was a 2-story machine that printed film. We were trying to go back to the old Technicolor process where you start with clear film and you had dye onto it, like the old Technicolor. And it took 2 floors of the building and it was super complex.
And I can only imagine what writing software for that is like.
It was a lot of pressure. Yes. I pretty much owned that machine, basically. The head of engineering hated me because I pretty much had control. What I said went. So, but that's the way it was.
And then you left just in time because you sort of, I think in another interview you mentioned that you kind of foresaw that everything was going digital.
Well, when I started there, every once in a while they'd say film is going to be gone in 5 years, and we stopped paying attention to it. So 20 years later, we're sitting in the theater looking at our Blackberries going, uh-oh, we're shutting down. So pretty much film died at that point.
Yeah.
So I stayed with it for another year or two. But when they started offering severance packages, I'm out. There's nothing to do here anymore because we kept shrinking and shrinking.
But thank you for your service to the Technicolor. That's a big deal. And now Bill is a Disney Imagineer.
That is true.
Which I'm going to ask him about in a few minutes. By the way, just since we're recording this, I'm going to mention that there have been some other interesting interviews of you if people want to look them up. Matthew Reed at trs80.org, he had a real nice review. And then Pete Stinsky and his crew at TRS-80 Trash Talk did a really nice one in episode number 5. Everyone's looking for that. So, yeah, I want to get back to Disney Imagineering. I want to make people wait a little while for the TRS. I married into a family of absolute Disney fanatics. My in-laws actually belong to a club called the Disney Fanatics.
Oh, wow.
So I have to ask you what it means to be a Disneyland or what do you do?
Well, I tried to get in around 2000 and I couldn't do it. And then sometime after Technicolor died, I saw this job listing and I went, ooh, this smells like Disney. And it was for the new Galaxy's Edge. It was in the Galaxy's Edge with the Star Wars attractions. And I got hired in as a contractor. Disney liked to hire a lot of people. It's a green badge, they call it. We got full-time employee, hourly. Then you can only stay 2 years. And after that, they converted me and I've been there ever since. So you've been to Disneyland, right?
Yeah.
The first time I got to walk the track at Haunted Mansion, and it's just like, my mind was like, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Our head was leaving and he had worked on the Indiana Jones attraction. He did all the stuff. And I go, can you get me a demo and walk through Indiana Jones before you leave? He goes, sure. So we were walking through the Indiana Jones attraction. Like that, just when you've grown up going to Disneyland and you get to walk through some of these attractions, it's really amazing.
That sounds great. So Pete Satinsky wanted me to ask you if your colleagues know your religion.
A handful do. And some of them have seen the Good Morning America interview. And there's a part on there where I forgot his name now that interviewed us. Blanking out of my head. But anyway, computers were a new thing at the time.
Yeah.
And he said something like, Bill Hogue writes computer software. Like he'd never heard the term before. But whenever I see this one guy work, he always goes, computer software.
So that's
David Hartman.
David Hartman. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice segue. I wanted to ask you about that the episode because I just saw it myself. It's on YouTube. It's available. How did they reach out to you? How did they know about you?
Well, it started with Money Magazine did an interview or did a story about it.
Okay.
And then the National Enquirer saw that and did a story about it.
Okay. And was that okay? Because they were famously
there was no made up stuff back then.
Okay.
No, there is some of the stuff in the article they did lie a little bit about it, but
aliens and yourself.
Nothing that crazy. Yeah. But both Jeff and I had Trans Ams at the time, so we had the pictures of us, with our Trans Ams and the phones with his kids. So Good Morning America saw that.
Okay.
So one led to the other.
Right.
So they called us up and they said, yeah, we want you to fly out to Florida, New York. And they picked us up in a limo and I shipped a model, I guess it was the Model 3, this demo on the show. And when the producer met me, she said, okay, we want you to do this, and this, and this. I'm like, I'm not ready to show all that. I got to block it. I have to work all night to get the computer to do that. She said, would you? Come on. So we had to stop at a Radio Shack in New York somewhere. I had to go buy assembler in there. I must have had my code with me somehow. So I was up all night long creating this fake thing where Jeff could go over and go, okay, then I hit this button and the screen comes on and I can draw aliens and then I can play. That was all made up.
I wanted to ask you about that because it went very smoothly as if it was something you just had in your back pocket.
Yeah.
But
if you watch it, you can tell me and press this button now because he's never seen it before.
Yeah. Wow. And what about the other kid? There's another kid who's on the show.
I never met him before. I think he maybe reviewed something.
Okay.
So I'm not sure where he came from or why he was there, other than the fact he was another young kid. So yeah, Owen was yeah.
And then after being on Good Morning America, did you have a certain amount of notoriety for a while, or
not
really?
Not like social media today. Vital.
Okay.
Jeff and I like playing pinballs and buying pinball machines and full-size arcade games. I had several. And there's a place in Northridge that we would buy them at. And we went back after the show and we saw them. And the husband goes, "Here's a gift for you. Look at this." And I open it up and it's dress socks. She goes, "Because you were wearing white socks, with your suit on Good Morning America." Okay.
That's great because, at the time it would have been expected for you to wear a suit on Good Morning America. And now I'm not so sure that would be
Yes.
quite, white socks would not be a problem. Let's see. Okay, so a lot of these questions are coming from people who submitted them on Discord. We encourage them for several weeks to send it in. And then someone named Nick Morentes says the Big Five games are easily the most polished games created on the TRS-80. To what do you attribute your sense of perfection when designing these games? No pressure.
I don't know. I want to answer that reverse, that I still see the sense of perfection in the stuff I do nowadays. I honestly don't know where it came from. But anything I'm doing, like if I'm working on a piece of wood at the house or doing things around the house or plumbing or something like that, I'll go, that just won't do. And I'll throw it out and I'll go back to Home Depot and I'll buy other stuff. And same thing at work today. If I'm programming something, I don't put up with stuff that marginally works. So that level of detail, it served me well, because when we're making the minor cartridges, you had to make those ROMs ahead of time. There were bugs in there that they're there for all eternity. You're not fixing it. Same thing in Technicolor. Those printing machines ran in the dark. And the film they produced, if it wasn't synced right, sometimes they would have stacks of film that would sit for hours, better part of the day before it would be developed. So if my machines were screwing up then, that would be horrendous if this whole room full of film was all garbage.
Yeah. All expensive.
Yeah. So
well, of course, if you're programming rides, you don't want to trash people. So but if there's someone with this mentality.
Yes. Yes. There are a few.
Okay, good. And then Peter Phillips asked, where'd you get the idea to add voice and how long did it take to get it working in the film?
I remember Jeff and I went to a convention in New York. We weren't, I don't think we were demonstrating. I don't think so. But there was, maybe it was on the TRS-80 color computer. There was a game I saw that was like a skiing game. And they had a little blurb about you start to ski, but say something. Oh, that's all. The plan to figure out how to do that. So I just basically used a cassette recorder to record my own voice, try to digitize it and see. But it was that skiing game that gave me the idea.
Did you digitize it with the TRS-80 cassette board?
Yes. Yeah. And just cheap and dirty, nothing.
It's amazing what you could do with hardware that wasn't intended to do sound at all.
Yeah. And you can't, voice took a lot of data. I mean, I had no idea what compression was back then. So that voice data took a lot of space. You waste a lot of it for us.
So when I sent in Weerd and it was accepted, I didn't have a TRS-80 with disk or 48K, but my friend Andrew did. Thank you, Andrew. And it's his birthday, actually, today. You asked me to make two modifications. One was something on the high score screen, and the other was to add voice and these little explosion sound effects. And so that was one little bit of code that you sent me along with the samples of it. But yeah, it was just not possible on my 16K computer. Little meetings where you did. I think probably 32K of that game was just voice. Just that voice, and it's compressed.
Yeah,
voice recording.
I had no idea what compression was. Sure, you people.
Yeah, and I don't think the CPU could have done much decompression anyway. It was barely keeping up, I'm sure. So what was your programming environment like? This is from Vinny Mann, 16K cassette, editor, assembler.
Yeah, it was off the shelf stuff from Radio Shack. It wasn't until I started doing the Atari stuff that I decided, okay, I'm writing my own processing.
Yeah.
So for Bounty Bob Strikes Back, the Atari game, we had Model 16s, each had the 68,000, and so gigantic 8-inch disc.
Yes.
So we would program on the Model 16, compile it, send it to the serial port to the Atari, and that really allowed us mostly to go much faster.
So Pete asked, if there's any more detail on that. So you wrote 6502 assembler on the 16. Can you elaborate any more? Like, how hard was that? What about the loading process? What was your OODA loop like? Like, how quickly could you turn around and change it through this?
Well, I had, remember on Body Bomb Strikes Back, it was going to be a bank selected cartridge.
Okay.
So there was an 8-bit ROM, an 8K ROM, and a 32K ROM was bank selected for banks. So I made up like some circuitry just with TTL was to simulate this, so that you could download it all through the circuit. And that's all. But I mean, the one thing it gave me was the ability to have comments. I mean, I remember in the assembler on the TRS-80 is like, there's no comments in it. There's not a space. So like have full comments on there, can print it. It was actually fireable.
That sounds great. Sounds great. But when you were on the Model 1 and Model 3, you were using stock tools, but you have presumably a 40K TRS disk drives, and
yes,
it sounds luxurious. Pete, I hope I've got enough detail on this process. If you think of anything else, please let us know, because he's out there in the woods.
Why was the cost somewhere on the 68,000s and not just in the 80s, just a lot faster?
I think we leased those computers, so we wanted to do something.
Why not the 80 of the models? What's the mid CPU of the Model 16?
Well, the Model 16 was 68,000. Pretty sure, right?
If I wish people chime in. Some of them had both, and some of them had both. Didn't they all have both Z80 and?
I don't remember. 68,000 was a card.
George might know. George.
The Model 2 was a Z80, and then they came out with the 16, which added a 68,000 card, and it could run a version of Tristos that used it, but it went nowhere. It was mostly used running Xenix, basically Unix on it. And then they had a Model 12, which was just a better Model 2, and they had a Model 6000, which was a better Model 16 with hard drives and stuff at that point.
So were you running another Xenix then?
With that all. Okay. I don't remember what the OS was. I do remember there was something weird about the opcodes, that there was some like a Radio Shack version of opcodes. So standing between the roll ones.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And so what about the transition? Nick Morantis asked the transition from Z80 to 6502. So I'll say, I'll preface this by saying I had a lot of friends who had Apple IIs, and they were real snobbish and mean to me. TRS-80 black and white, low resolution people. But I used to always give them a hard time because I thought their processor was pretty terrible. So with that, Travis, what?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you make up with all the color.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Miner 2049, or you can see I'm just like a kid in a candy store with all the color. Because wherever I can put color, in the high score screen, all the different colors. I was trying to see how many different colors I could get on the screen at the top with displayless interrupts. So once you get down past here, you can change the color, more color. So,
but the CPU.
The CPU it's not as the 80. Yeah, give me that.
Accessing memory in 256 byte chunks, if that was not work. Yeah. Okay. I just had to do that, didn't. Let's see. Okay. I think you've been asked this question before, but there are people out there who would really like the answer to not be what you said before.
Okay.
So Pantera Max asks, does Big 5 software has have Z80 source code to any of their games, perhaps on cassette tape rather than disc?
No. After Big Five ended, I was pretty angry with life and game business in general, and I chucked all of it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I did want to pursue a career in games.
Yeah.
So I didn't save. Now, I did save some of the shrink wrap games.
Yeah.
But any of the stuff that was used to make it go.
And Jeff didn't keep any of it. So I'm kind of interested in that. What made you feel that way? I don't really know what happened at the very end of Big Five's Oscar.
Well, our sales kept going down and down and down. We were looking for a new office because our lease was expired when the other launch. So we kept trying to find an office, couldn't find one. We just moved it into my house. So the business just kept shrinking.
Yeah.
And toward the end, it was just like, okay, it's time to call it. We're all going to get rid of jobs.
Yeah.
My mom and stepdad, who were doing some work for me, probably them, they just decided to retire. They sold their home, bought a motor home, started touring the world, the country. I went out in search of a real job.
Okay. So basically, you surfed the wave of the TRS-80 and then hopped over to the Atari, where you had great success for a while. But it was the beginning of the IBM PC or something?
Yes, the IBM PC was coming out, and for games, Nintendo was the hot ticket back then. I guess I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was burned out in game.
I can only imagine, after all of those games, which you were the primary author again. Yeah. There's one other film Weerd that was
Weller Asgard, written by Jeff Sin, who was a friend that I'd known years past from the Radio Shack. So,
okay.
Well, yeah, he's the only one.
Did he have copies of his source code?
Possible.
Okay. All right.
We're not on the best speaking terms.
Okay.
Anymore.
All right. I understand. maybe someone else can send it there. They're curious. Don't harass him. Don't harass.
What Weerd? You're doing.
That's an awkward question because I've always tried to keep. I'm a little embarrassed about my own source code too. I'll think of it. But the image is available, so you can run them.
Yeah, the source code. It exists. But,
it does exist. Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm just running this now. And George did make a note. He said, if you look at the executables of the games, there's some tiny fragments of source code that's not in.
I don't know anything about that, but maybe there's just blank buffers or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I was ever making an effort to wipe out buffer areas.
So this is before wiped out anything to prevent security exploits. Right?
Yeah.
This wasn't that back then. Well, no. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So George wants to know how much time did you spend playing games rather than playing the games that you wrote, rather than implementing?
I was a very poor player of those games. Hence, I would say that was Jeff's contribution in that regard more than I ever did anything. He was the best game player. Not just the TRS-80 games, but also the full-size Atari games.
Okay.
And that more simply played Missile Command as good as he could play. Asteroid.
That's an important person to have on the team.
Yes.
One.
Yes. So he was the expert tester, and give him all the credit for that. I think we even played a minor not too long ago on the PS5, and he still beat me. So,
okay. So we went we kind of covered the end of the Big Five, but I'm always curious about how it began, right? So were you writing a lot of games on your own and then thought, okay, I should sell them and start selling them, and then you made Big Five?
So when I was working at Radio Shack, I was tinkering and toying. Back at the time, you remember Saturday Night Live, where it was something run the Coneheads?
Yeah.
I remember doing my first thing called the Coneheads. I don't remember what it was about, but it was the Coneheads. After that, I wrote Meteor Mission, which was like something, I think it was like Space Race in the arcade. And never did anything. But when I went to Cal State Northridge, on my second semester, I found I was like spending more time toying with this than I was concentrating on schoolwork. And back then, the first programming class I had was with punch cards.
Yep.
If you remember that. So I just decided I don't like this political science class that I'm taking right now. I'm having more fun. So I just started doing that full time.
Okay.
Left Radio Shack, started selling games out of my house, out of my bedroom, and it really just took off.
So had you established the Big Five brand?
Yeah.
So that was very beginning.
Yeah. The Big Five name comes from in junior high. A bunch of us were in this TV production class. So, setting up cameras and special effects generators, do various things. And 5 of us friends, we decided we'd do the Big Five. It's class. We knew how to do everything. So that were the Big Five.
Were they all involved with the Big
No.
Five, or you just liked the name?
I just like the name.
Yeah. Okay.
The only person that was involved later was Curtis Michaeliski.
Okay.
Who shows up on the shows.
Yeah, on scores and okay. Well, so George wanted to know whether you were able to beat your games a play indefinitely. It sounds like that was Jeff's job.
That was Jeff's job.
Yeah. But then he also asked, do you know which of your games can be beaten? Maybe players will let you know. In other words, can you reach an end where they suck?
I don't remember the answer to that question. I don't know what happens if you keep going.
Okay.
I can say for sure the Atari games that Curtis was drawing more of the levels on that. He took great pride in making them so difficult that almost nobody could finish them. And he would giggle and see people crash and burn on the level like that. So we didn't do that on the TRS-80 games, that maybe you can play with. I don't know.
I certainly didn't make any way. Just Weerd is designed to just keep going, but it was running as fast as it possibly could. It's hard to make it much more difficult.
Yeah, and I know there's the flagship that comes out later. I don't know if it starts killing you at the end or not.
So George says, I know for sure Supernova, Galaxy Invasion, and Attack Force can be beaten. And I'm almost certain Cosmic Fighter and Meteor Mission 2 can be beaten. I'm not sure if that means he's almost won or but he doesn't think World Attack or Defense Command can be beaten. But we don't have an authoritative answer from either line now. All right. Let's see. Okay. Back to later in Big Five's life. After leaving the TRS-80 world, Big Five headed to the Atari and released the hugely successful game Miner 2049er, this is Nick again, which was ported to many other computers at the time. Was there ever a TRS-80 or color computer version ever planned or started?
Yes. When we had our second office in Van Nuys, this was one of the downfalls of Big Five. Started hiring too many people.
Yeah.
Payrolls. I should have taken a business class. Too bad. Or getting back on this payroll kills you. But one of my friends named Kelly was working on a TRS-80 version of Miner. And we never released it.
So Nick follows up by saying, if someone wanted to create a TRS-80 version of Miner 2049, would there be any objections or fee?
There would be objections now, not from me, from Atari, because a couple of years ago, I got on a call saying, hey, I represent somebody that might want to buy Miner 2049er. Come on, so they come up with a number. So I came up with this ridiculous number. And they said, okay, we'll pay it. And it turned out it's Atari, or the new Atari. So Atari now owns Miner 2049er, Bonnie Bomb Strikes Back, and they released it on this for PS5.
Yeah.
The new 400 emulator computer that just came out. Apparently it's on there. They didn't give me a copy of it. That's just what I've been told.
Okay.
So no, they own it now. So fantastic. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a definitive answer.
And
Yeah, I know my contract with Big Five said that if you stopped selling it, then it would revert to me. And someone whose name I don't remember contacted me a few years later and said, "Okay, we'll sell it." And I didn't get paid anything, but it would bring it back to me again, which is why I was offered it. Yeah. So I guess all of the other games you retain the copyright to. It's like that. Oh, TRC.
yeah. The numbers sound like a new version from others. Sorry. Like,
You never know. You never know. So I was going to ask you what was a day at Big Five like? I mean, I kind of got the idea that the work was divided into you being the programmer, Jeff, doing a lot of the testing.
and that he did some of the graphics and stuff like that, drive and images and stuff.
Okay.
We had other people that, my mom was answering the phone, my stepdad was kind of running the office, and later we had a few employees that were shrink wrapping. And once we started moving into the shrink wrap realm, I remember the original ones were just a baggie, with a colored piece of paper.
Yeah.
Printed it so speedy.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when I would go to the grocery store and buy a whole cart full of Ziploc, I got them pretty weird stares. Like, hey boys, what are you gonna use of Ziplocs?
Power game.
Now what do you think? Nothing illegal.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
How many employees did you?
Sorry.
How many employees did you have? Like, please.
Girl.
Matt, can you please mute yourself, Matt?
I'm trying. Sorry.
I would think the maximum was maybe like 12.
Okay. But that's kind of wrong rate.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's see. So actually, I did want to ask you about the packaging. So was there just a big machine that you used for shrink wrapping, and you had an employee full time doing that, or
Well, so after we got past the Ziploc phase, this guy named Barry Friedman came to me and he said, "I represent some artists. I can set you up with some artists. You can redo all your packages."
Okay.
So one guy out in Chatsworth, he did the Supernova box. The Tac Force, all of those were done by him. And then we started transitioning to full color, which took a lot more effort to get full color stuff done. And that's when we moved to the shrink wrap. So if you've ever seen the shrink wrap machine, but you have the roll of shrink plastic, you put it over there, put the thing down, it seals it around there and just heaps it on there.
I just kind of wanted to ask because it's just such a completely different era, right? Right now, no one ever sees your bits packaged into there's not a floppy disk, there's not a cassette tape, there's not even a manual, right? It's just a website. So it's nice to come point out that software was a physical artifact for a while.
Yeah. And we had to be careful with that because you're putting a disk in there and then putting a piece of heat around it, large heating machine.
Well, if you find a bug, now you've made 100 copies of this thing that you can't overwrite.
Yeah. Now the discs, the cassettes we were having later professionally reproduced. So there was an audio tape cassette company somewhere in Hollywood that they would just make duplicates of the tape. The disc, we were actually hiring somebody to sit there all night long, and one after another.
Wow.
It seems crazy nowadays when you have like big disc duplicating machines. That was the only way we knew how to do it. That's how this one at a time. And
In a TRS-80, not
in a TRS-80. Yeah. Now the disc had my own little copy protection thing. People had subsequently broken, so that when you would write the disc, the number of bytes that would get written on a track was never the same. So I would write the track, record that, store it somewhere. So if somebody duplicated the disc, the track lanes would be exactly the same, and I could go, aha, that's a counterfeit disc. So that's why we had to, you couldn't just hand it off to a disk duplication place, even if you could find one.
Oh, because it was running your code.
It was running my code and making every disk slightly different at the end.
So we talked about your folks and Jeff and a few others. Are there any other personalities we should know about from the Big 5 days?
Well, there's Curtis, who, like I said earlier, shows up in the December command. He went to junior high school with me. I still see him occasionally. He did all the levels for the Atari games. He's one of the people, like a bunch of people on the levels. You mentioned Jeff Zinn from Stellar Escort. It's probably all the big names.
Go look at. Let's see. Well, you mentioned the artists. So you switched artists when you got when I said in Weerd. I remember like, oh no, this is not the art that I remember from the other games.
I don't remember the package. Did we use Scott Ross?
Yes, Ross.
Ross, a pretty big time artist.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, he's very well known. So he did minor.
It was kind of like it also had a graffiti feel to.
Yeah, he was a great artist. I don't remember why we didn't use him for Bonnie Bob's Right Back. It might have been he just became too expensive because he was becoming so well known. But yeah, if we used Scott Ross for yours, he was the best.
Right. That makes me feel big.
The guy who did the earlier stuff, some of that was like cobbled together, literally pasted like the original South Park, where they're cutting out stuff and putting it together. That's how, and some like the laser blasts were like tape that he like laid out.
They looked really great. Yeah. So you were pretty young.
Yeah.
Did you ever encounter problems because of your age running this substantial business?
I remember a couple times being really annoyed when people that were selling stuff to us would come over and I'd go, well, don't worry about it. I'll just go take it up with, Ted. No, I run the company. He works for me. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it was hard for people to get a sense that it was my company.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Same thing with office space. I was wondering if realtors.
Realtors, I don't think there's an age thing. They never like, oh, you're too young. We're not going to let you sign a lease. No.
Okay.
So we're more than happy to show us buildings.
I'm sorry for jumping around a little bit. I'm thinking back to that demo you did on Good Morning America, and I seem to remember Jeff kind of. There was something that made me think that there was some sort of editor program that you've written for editing the aliens, right?
Well, again, that was all for show.
Did you use anything like that behind the scenes, or was it all just
all assembly? You remember the Radio Shack had this grid paper?
Yeah.
Means that.
I still have my designs on that paper. Because there was.
You remember when the movie E.T. came out? I don't remember if it was a Radio Shack game or the Atari, but we were waiting in line at the Center of Hollywood to watch that movie, and I was sitting there drawing. You had to wait in line like 2 or 3 hours to see that. I was actually drawing aliens, different various things on there. And we were actually on the NBC Nightly News while we were waiting in line.
It's totally not related to the game.
Randomly. So, but I saw them coming over. So I had a program for ET. So I took my drawing and I hid it in the program. We made it look like I was reading the ET program. But I was actually drawing for the computer games.
Did you have any unfinished games? This is from Ven.
For Atari, we were struggling to come up with something better than Miner 2049 because that had been so well received.
Yeah.
So I had this one thing called Scraper Caper. And I had it was like you're building on fire and rescue. I put a lot of effort into scrolling. And it just It felt boring, never went in.
Okay.
And another one that was kind of like Crystal Castles or Castle or Caverns. It was like a three-dimensional type of thing that Atari did, where you could jump around and walk up pieces. For a lot of effort and north, and I was like, no, and that's when we decided, let's just make a sequel to Miner 2049er. We know what we're doing here. We'll just make it a way better version.
And you have a ready-made audience that
Yes.
brought in for it. Yeah. So speaking of the company Atari, Jen asks, were there any threats and lawsuits?
So there were, yeah.
Were there?
Initially, Atari, once they saw how many games we were selling, they came after us with their attorneys. I got an attorney to fight them. It's all, you have nothing to worry about. Your games are different. You have this, you have that. Here's not called asteroids. Here's called supernova. After a while, they became more aggressive, but we were almost done with the Tiris 80 back then. And so I think we struck some sort of deal. Okay, we won't sell supernova because it's like asteroids.
Okay.
We won't sell Galaxy Invasion because well, sounds like Galaxy. So yeah, there was some trouble.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why you'll see the shift toward like defense command. It's like not at all like anything you've ever seen. And Miner 2049er was completely all different. Although you might say it's Donkey Kong rolled together with Pac-Man, different things like that. But it's not like any other game.
Did you go after anyone?
There were not with a vengeance. There were some people that were like pirating things like that, but I never spent any huge amount of money trying to make them stuff. It's another reason why I wanted to get out of the Radio Shack business, because I thought it was becoming just pirated everywhere. And the Atari, especially with cartridge, you couldn't pirate a cartridge very easily. No, some people found a way to do Miner 39er because it was just 16K ROM, but the bank selected thing for Bang Bob Strikes Back bought me some time, I think, before they could figure out a way to emulate a bank selected ROM.
So if you push the technology far enough, it becomes harder to.
Yeah. Nowadays it would take 5 seconds.
Sure. Well, so another question for Ben. When Big Five was shutting down, did you ever consider trying to sell it to Sierra or EA or one of the other places? I'm not sure which ones exist, if it's only one.
Yeah, taking that business loans.
And I think and have you ever done a Big Five reunion? This is the first one. But this is actually
well, I'm not sure who there'd be a reunion with. I mean, I see Jeff all the time.
Yeah.
I see Curtis occasionally. He just had a heart valve replacement and knee surgery.
Wow.
Which makes me nervous because I'm like the same age as he is. My parents long since they're gone. Jeff Zinn worked with me at technical art for me. I don't see him.
So Arno wants me to ask you if you have any questions for me, since this is the first time we're meeting in person. The only contact we ever had was literally postal mail, and I think one phone call.
I don't remember that time very well. So what was it like for you? Why did you send your game to us?
I mean, so Big Five was the name in games, especially for some arcade style games. So it just seemed clear if I was on get distribution. It never even occurred to me that I could make a game. Distribute a game myself.
Right.
And when you said yes, it was a real surprise. And I figured I'd go for the long shot, but to be accepted was really amazing.
I wish we would have done more of that rather than try to hire the programmers in-house, because I think we probably were more successful with yours than any of the other people.
I mean, it's a good business move because it puts the risk on, if you don't take the risk, right?
Yeah.
Putting more of the risk on the awesome. And, there were, you had the Lloyd following in my small, TRS-80 community in Baltimore, and Big Five was all over the place. Of course, I've finished all the products like that. But there were a lot of people who buying the games too.
I do remember something about attorneys going back and forth, and you were always saying my attorney's like this or something.
Yeah. So my father is not a technical guy at all, but he decided that we should hire an attorney to review the contract that we sent, which was family just a totally standard contract.
What were you guys worried about? That what were you trying to protect?
I have no idea. It was just a reflexive thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Dad is a Methodist minister, but he also has rented apartments at Utah. So he has a one-page lease that usually that's our only experience with contract law. So he figured, we should get an attorney to look this over. And I will say that attorney, if I hadn't begged and begged, it would have basically, he would have consumed all the props that I made thinking they're weird over its entire run. As it was, I got to have about half of them. But no, it wasn't coming from us other than just, we should have someone look over it. And I think the attorney just said, well, in order to justify charging this much money, I need to suggest some tweaks. So yes, we got your contract, the HR guy, he looked it over, said, add this paragraph, strike this thing, send it back to you. You sent it to your attorney. So we probably cost you some money. Well, I'm sorry for that. I still think it was probably a smart move, but because I thought maybe there was going to be a lot of money involved in the long run, right? That you were seeing all these articles in Newsweek magazine and stuff, but you were driving Camaro, did you say? Transams, right? With kids,
It's Smokey and the Bandit was a favorite movie.
Yeah.
So I had that in my own Trans Am.
Programmers, young teenage programmers, sitting on the hoods of their fancy car. I was too young to drive at the time, but at least I had some hope. So yeah, I would want to, I suppose, check whatever possibilities there were, but in the end, it turned out.
So were you, anything that's in your game, were you inspired by what you saw in it? I mean,
Yes. So fundamentally, I was looking at your graphics, and you should tell me whether this is true. I thought maybe the graphics in all of your games was done kind of character at a time and not pixel at a time. Was that true? Did you?
what do you mean?
In other words, so I was trying something, what I thought was visually different with Weerd, which was each enemy has different shape and size. It didn't fit into the same, 1x3 cell or 1x5 cell of characters. It was a set of pixels, and it could move pixel by pixel rather than character by character. So I sort of, when I was a kid, I didn't like playing video games. I liked looking at them to try to figure out how the programmer did what they had done. And so I studied your games relentlessly, usually over the shoulder of someone annoyed by my presence, trying to figure out what to do. And I thought, well, it looks like they're trying to get performance by moving, by blasting characters at a time on rather than by doing pixel at a time. I'll see if I can make it go fast enough, pixel at a time, to work. So yeah, that was
You would not believe how many emails I've gotten over the years from people who say, you inspired me to get into computing. I've tried different things.
Yes. It's I'm sure it's a wonderful feeling.
And it is.
Were there more unsolicited submissions? People sending you games like, hey, you want to take this up?
No, I don't recall that at all. I think you might have been the only one. Yeah.
Yeah. I still don't. I was painfully shy kid, so it kind of surprised me that I was willing to even try to do something on top. But maybe it was because it was writing a letter, putting it in an envelope, and sending it to each. When you feeling not so difficult. well, I'm glad I did, because I mean, I was probably going to be a software engineer ultimately anyway, but boy, did that make it. That was validation for sure, and it wasn't just my immediate crowd. So I kind of have to ask this question. And I think I'll finish with this question. If you were talking to a kid today who wanted to get into a career in software or computer games or just what would you say to them? I know there've been a lot of technical and social changes since Big Five, but maybe there might be some principles and approaches that are still effective, or career paths that you would like known.
I don't know that I'm qualified anymore. You mean like the games that I play? My favorite game was Last of Us, PlayStation. And when you look at the credits of these games, there's hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people just do rain effects or like little hair stuff like that. Back then, you could have one programmer, as you know, write an entire thing.
Yeah.
So I think it took a lot more creativity back then to create something from nothing almost. It's easy for anybody to get into that. I would never go down to Naughty Dog and say, hey, I'm a former video game programmer. Would you hire me? They'd like laugh me out of the building. Now, because these people, they have totally different skill sets.
What about outside of games, but in software engineering in general?
Well, I mean, like in Imagineering, the younger hires that I see are the interns, like Arno and I were talking about this earlier. They can produce amazing stuff by just downloading pieces on the internet, slapping it together, and look at that. You've got something pretty amazing. But when it busts every other hour, they're like, we figure out. So that would be my suggestion to children today. Make sure you understand the under the hood stuff so that when it doesn't go well, you can troubleshoot it.
Maybe adopt some of the perfections.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen Unreal, the game engine programmers that need hired to do various things. You get a jitter in there and they go, oh, when that's happening, they have no way to, no knowledge in how to pursue it. So, I mean, it's great to make the cool stuff, but make sure you understand what's going on so that when it fails, you can fix it. You can release a quality.
Sounds like a good advice.
Yeah, I mean, they're on Disney. They're using Unreal in the parks now for attractions. Frightening you.
Wow.
Like if you go on the Smuggler's Run attraction, where you're flying the Millennium Falcon, that's all Unreal, driving everything and controlling the motion base that you're in.
I will say I've been on that ride one time, and it crashed. The software crashed almost immediately after the door shut, and took us about 5 minutes to get their attention to let us out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll try it again.
Yeah. It's a fun ride if it doesn't crash, and you're not letting little kids be the pilots flying it. If you're not the pilots, there's the other positions aren't that fun.
Okay. Okay. Well, I should let. Is there anyone who would like to?
Any Easter eggs in any of the games?
Well, Minor, Bounty Bob had only only things that you would consider Easter eggs. On Minor, we put our phone number in, so if you type the phone number in, you can jump levels. For Bounty Bob, we knew people were going to try that. So we put like little messages in, like, aha, we knew you're going to try that. Don't do that. So there were a number of little messages, really, so Easter eggs, but nothing like that in the TRC.
That is a great question.
The second question is, from a business side, like how many copies do you think you guys sold of your product on the TRC side?
I have no idea.
Or magnitude. Thousands, tens,
for sure.
Hundreds of thousands.
I would say tens. Yeah. The Atari games were more. Because when, we were ordering ROMs, these little chip companies that we're not going to sell you chips unless you admit like 5,000. And we discovered that they would go, okay, we've only made 1,000, here's 1,000, and then we'd pay for it because we wanted more. And then, oh, what do you know? We've suddenly got another 1,000 that they'd made like a whole bunch, but they were holding them back until we paid our bills. So the Atari, was Atari. So many, much more.
Anyone else have any questions? Bill? All right. Well, Bill, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure meeting you after all these years.
Same here.
And great thanks to Arno for organizing it and for putting us together after all this time.
We're great to see you guys on the same stage here.
Yeah.
So
Great.